The future's here, but nobody knows it yet. Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, and while it's not the only currency, it is by far the most popular. So what is Bitcoin, and don't people use it to just buy drugs? Well, we'll get to the second part later. So asking what Bitcoin is kind of like asking what the US dollar is. It's a question wrongly asked, because they both fall into larger categories. The US dollar falls into the larger category of fiat currency, like paper money, and Bitcoin falls into the larger category of cryptocurrency, which is just a fancy word for digital. With this in mind, in order to understand Bitcoin, we first also have to understand what cryptocurrency is. Either way, let's use Bitcoin because it's still the most popular. Bitcoin works like any other kind of money. You can buy it with US dollars, much like you were buying euros if you were going to France. Or, if you don't want to buy it, you can sell goods or offer services in exchange for Bitcoin. Then, once you have some Bitcoins, you can then go about buying goods and services with them. Although, not a lot of goods and services because Bitcoin is still relatively new. The only real difference is you never really get to see it, hold it. It's not tangible. You can't make it rain with Bitcoin. Because Bitcoin is really just a mathematical algorithm. An ongoing online ledger of who owes whom to what. In fact, that's exactly what the blockchain is, which is at the heart of Bitcoin. I know that freaks people out that they can't actually hold it or see it, but think, most people get their paychecks directly deposited into their bank now anyway. And then with this little plastic card, they go about completing transactions electronically anyway. So if you think about it, it's really not that different. You just never get to make a withdrawal. Bitcoin also has a few advantages to other current currencies. Right now it's faster and cheaper to transfer anywhere in the world, as you don't have to pay for bank fees or transaction fees, and you don't have to wait for bank processing, which can take days. Bitcoin also has no central control, which doesn't matter so much at the individual level, but at the large level, banks and countries don't like this, as they can't manipulate the currency to suit their own vested interest, as the country can't inflate their way out of debt, and or they can't purposely restrict their own currency to create it artificially stronger. I'm looking at you, China. So that being said, Bitcoin makes itself a perfect currency for third world countries that can't get large bank loans or lending through the IMF. So now I want to pause and address two big concerns. I hear in the news that people keep hacking Bitcoin and that it's really unsafe and that I'm going to lose all my money. Bitcoin is not getting hacked. Remember the Wild West, Bonnie and Clyde, where you could hold up a bank if you had a faster horse or a bigger gun or some ingenuity and you could make off a ton of money? Well, we live in the Wild West of the digital age, where people with sophisticated software can hack into exchanges, which is basically the Bitcoin equivalent of Bitcoin banks. People can hack into the Bitcoin banks, and if the bank has poor security, they can rob them. But this is completely different than hacking into Bitcoin itself. Just as we cannot hack into the Federal Reserve and control the United States national money supply, nobody can hack into Bitcoin and control the currency. So TLDR, Bitcoin is safe. Very safe. Now, isn't Bitcoin just like drug money? Because Bitcoin is a digital currency and not controlled by one authority, it lends itself very favorably to be used in the black market. So what this means is, whether people want to admit it or not, the war on drugs is over. Because now I can buy basically anything I want over the internet off marketplaces like the Silk Road and purchase it anonymously and quickly. But this doesn't mean Bitcoin is inherently bad. It simply means people will always come up with ways to get what they want, whether it's drugs or McDonald's. And Bitcoin just happens to function as a very effective and efficient means of conducting these black market transactions. So when people wonder if Bitcoin has any inherent value, we already see that it does. Markets and transactions and goods and services have developed around this currency without any national or federal banking backing. Without the FDIC or any sort of tentative push, a market has developed around the exchange of Bitcoin. Why? Because the value of Bitcoin is derived from its high utility as a currency. It's fast and efficient and anonymous. So there's so much more to talk about Bitcoin, and we didn't even get into the logistics or the infrastructure of Bitcoin, or even the system of checks and balances like Bitcoin mining or the blockchain. But before I run out of time, I want to talk about what I see as the most important aspect of Bitcoin, and it's one that I don't think even a lot of Bitcoin users have thought about. You see, Bitcoin has a built-in deflationary element. The total number of Bitcoins allowed in circulation at one time is a strict number, number X. Now, currently, we're only about 20% of that in total, and Bitcoin is divisible by many decimals, just like the US dollar is divisible by quarters, dimes, nickels, pennies. Nonetheless, at some point, the currency's economic growth can only go so far. It's the same reason the United States no longer uses the gold standard. We went off the gold standard so we could compete and grow our economy at a faster rate. And right now, Bitcoin straddles an interesting line between commodity and currency. You see, the people investing in Bitcoin and hoping to make money off it as the price in Bitcoin rises need it to be a commodity. But in order for Bitcoin to be an effective currency, people need to want to spend it rather than save it or store it. Gold is bad at being money precisely because of this reason. Nobody wants to conduct their transactions with gold. They just want to hold on to it or save it or store it and hope it's worth a lot of money continually. And right now it's not quite clear what will happen, because in order for Bitcoin to be a true global currency, and in my opinion the most pure and effective currency the world's ever seen, it has to be a bad investment. And in order for it to be a bad investment, the price of Bitcoin has to drop dramatically. In fact, it has to be worth basically nothing, because then its utility is in its ability to conduct transactions between goods and services, rather than its utility being in preserving value. And oppositely, for it to be a good investment, it has to turn into what would be the equivalent of digital gold. Either way, the tidal wave of change has risen, whether people see it or not. And eventually, it will come crashing down on our current infrastructure of banking and finance. As always, links in the description.